Is Trump the new Teflon Don? Even if a grand jury says there's enough evidence to file criminal charges against Donald Trump, he just keeps coming up with ways to skirt accountability. This time, his defense isn't that he didn't do the crimes. No, Trump says the person that's investigating his crimes is not legally appointed. Here we go. I'm Stephanie Rivers, and you're watching my journal. You could be watching on several platforms. On whatever you're watching, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so that when I post new videos, you'll be the first to know. Now, it's bad enough that SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, has granted Donald Trump a get out of jail free card by giving him partial immunity from prosecution. Now, at least one justice said he would be willing to help Trump avoid prosecution altogether in his classified documents case. In his opinion, in support of partial immunity for Trump, Justice Clarence Thomas also wrote that the appointment of a special prosecutor to prosecute Trump might not be constitutional. Here's what Uncle Tom said in his own words during a recent interview. Quote, "If there is no law establishing the office that the special counsel occupies, then he cannot proceed with this prosecution. A private citizen cannot criminally prosecute anyone, let alone a former president," unquote. Now, when did Thomas say this? It was presented like an addendum to his written opinion in favor of presidential immunity, of partial presidential immunity. Now, mind you, justices are not supposed to write opinions on cases that are not before their court because, one, it shows partiality that could, two, prejudice the way a case moves through the court system. Since 1875, there have been 11 special prosecutors appointed for various investigations from both Republicans and Democrats. These attorneys, they're called special prosecutors or special investigators or independent counsel. They are lawyers. They're appointed to investigate and potentially prosecute a particular case of suspected wrongdoing when a conflict of interest might exist. Usually that conflict of interest is when the attorney general is appointed by one president from a political party, but the investigation happens to be focused on someone else that's representing another political party. Now, if you have any questions or knowledge about this, I am watching the chat and you are watching my journal. You could be watching on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. I am on a number of platforms multicasting. Now, by asking for District Court Judge Eileen Cannon in Florida to dismiss this classified documents case against Trump, his defense team essentially is claiming that 149 years of president is illegal. And if you don't know what that's Judge Eileen Cannon, District Court, Judge Eileen Cannon. Now, when I read the comments from everyday Americans who cannot believe that Trump inches ever so close to getting away with being the most in-your-face criminal in the history of America, not to be held responsible for his illegal actions, I can't help but make it about Black people. Stick with me while I take you through this. Let me explain what I'm saying. See, this is what African descendants of slaves have been trying to tell everybody for at least the last 400 years. Elitist white people make laws and regulations to benefit themselves. But when other people, Black Americans, for example, try to use these laws and regulations for their benefit because we're US citizens too, right? And that's the way it's supposed to work. These elite white people, they get together and they reinterpret and they repurpose the law, or they just ignore it altogether. Let me give you some examples. The 40 acres promised to freed slaves to help them establish homesteads after their emancipation was either never gifted to them like it was supposed to have been, or it was stolen back from them by former slave owners who were angry about the new law. Another example, redlining. Before the 1968 Fair Housing Act made it a federal law made it against the federal law to deny somebody the right to live where they wanted based on their race or national origin, millions of African Americans were not allowed to live in certain neighborhoods because some white people made their own rules that made it illegal to sell their homes to African Americans. And if a black family was able to purchase in that coveted white neighborhood, that black family had KKK crosses burned in their yards, their houses were torched, and family members got lynched if they didn't leave. Now, that was before the Federal Housing Act. Since that time, African Americans are still denied credit and loans they should qualify for, which prevents them from acquiring property. And if African Americans manage to qualify for the mortgage and they want to have their property appraised, some companies intentionally undervalue their home, so black people end up not getting the value from the home that they should. Now, that's just two examples, present and past, examples of de jure, what the law says, and de facto, how the law is practiced. Now, I could go on, but I think you get my point. The bottom line is, some of y'all have done messed around and elected an openly racist, power-hungry, egomaniac to be president of the United States. That would be Donald Trump. And he doesn't care whose rights he has to step on to get to where he's trying to go, which is stay in power. Now, you see what ADOS have been experiencing for the last at least 400 years. Elite, openly white, racist people will do what elite, openly racist white people want to do. They DGAF what the law says. They're going to make it do what they want it to do whenever they feel like it. And if it doesn't turn out, if they happen to get prosecuted, then they're going to get their elite friends to block the prosecution. Or if they happen to have to stand trial, then they just pardon each other because that's how they work. The sad part is many of you didn't care about how it affected us until it started to affect you. And that's where we find ourselves today. And just in case you ride a short bus and you still don't get it, here's my last example to drive it home. Walt Nauta, that is the co-defendant for Donald Trump in his, I'm going to show you his picture. This is Walt Nauta. He's Trump's co-defendant in his classified documents case. He asked for Judge Cannon, who happens to be a Trump appointee, by the way, to dismiss his case on the grounds of selective prosecution. Judge Cannon denied his request. But in denying his request, she also says that she is not necessarily going to deny Trump's request if he happens to ask for, which he has, asked for his case to be dismissed. She is thinking about that one. She quickly told Walt Nauta, I'm not going to dismiss your case. But as Donald Trump has asked for his case to be dismissed, she's thinking on that. So how can that be? Even though they're the same case, she has the right, I guess, to deny one person the dismissal of his case while possibly allowing the dismissal of Donald Trump's case, even though they're the same case. How can that be? Short bus riders might ask. Well, Trump is protected by that President is King SCOTUS decision, remember, that just came down a few days ago. The co-defendant Nalta is not one of the elites, so he can't skirt the law like the others can. He's not like them. The moral of the story is, when Black people tell you that openly racist white people exist, believe us. And when people show you who they are, believe them. That's all I got for you today. To find out more about the things that I care about, you can go to the written version of my journal. It's at eurweb.com.